The situation of illegal immigration to Spain in the contemporary landscape of global geopolitics. The Mediterranean Sea has transformed from a historic highway of commerce into one of the world's most perilous migration corridors. At the western terminus of this basin lies Spain, serving as a primary maritime and terrestrial gateway into the European Union. Over the past few decades, hundreds of thousands of migrants, a significant majority originating from predominantly Muslim nations in North Africa, the West African Sahel, and the Middle East, have risked their lives to cross Spanish borders. This demographic movement is not a random phenomenon, but a highly structured, desperate response to a complex web of interconnected drivers. To fully understand why these individuals cross into Spain, one must examine a matrix of push factors such as economic stagnation, political instability, climate degradation, and systemic insecurity, alongside powerful pull factors, including geographic proximity, labor demands, institutional frameworks, and the deeply human desire for family reunification. Economic asymmetries and the pursuit of survival. At the core of the migration surge is a stark economic disparity between Spain and the countries of origin. The economic push factors operating in regions like the Maghreb, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and the Sahel, Mali, Niger, Senegal, are structural and deeply entrenched. Youth demographics and unemployment. Many Muslim-majority nations in Africa and the Middle East are experiencing a youth bulge. While a young population can theoretically drive economic growth, these nations suffer from a chronic inability to generate sustainable employment. In Morocco and Algeria, youth unemployment rates consistently hover at alarming levels, often exceeding 25 to 30%. For university graduates and low-skilled laborers alike, the domestic market offers little hope for upward mobility or financial independence. The lack of a viable future forces young individuals to look northward, where the European market represents a chance to earn a living wage. Geopolitical instability, conflict, and persecution. While economic hardship drives a vast number of migrants, acute political crises and violent conflicts force millions of refugees to seek asylum. Spain's position as an entry point makes it a destination for those fleeing state collapse and persecution in Muslim-majority regions. Shifting routes and regional conflicts. The geopolitical convulsions of the past 2 decades have fundamentally altered migration dynamics. The aftermath of the Arab Spring, the protracted civil war in Syria, and ongoing instability in Libya have displaced millions. When Eastern and Central Mediterranean routes, such as those leading to Greece or Italy, become heavily militarized or politically blocked, migration flows naturally redirect toward the Western Mediterranean route leading to Spain. The crisis in the Sahel. Further south, the West African Sahel has become a hotbed of violent extremism, ethnic conflict, and governance failure. Countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are locked in protracted battles against insurgent groups aligned with Al-Qaeda and Islamic State factions. The breakdown of state authority in these regions leaves civilian populations vulnerable to massacres, extortion, and forced conscription. For a young Muslim living in rural Mali, fleeing toward the Mauritanian coast and taking a wooden boat, pirogue, to Spain's Canary Islands is often the only alternative to death or radicalization. The silent accelerator, climate change, and environmental degradation. In recent years, environmental factors have emerged as a critical, underreported driver of migration, acting as a threat multiplier that exacerbates existing economic and political vulnerabilities. Agricultural collapse in the Sahel and Maghreb. A vast portion of the population in the Sahel and rural North Africa relies strictly on subsistence agriculture and pastoralism. However, the effects of global climate change, including desertification, unpredictable rainfall patterns, prolonged droughts, and the shrinking of vital water bodies like Lake Chad, have devastated these traditional livelihoods. When the land can no longer support crops or livestock, rural economies collapse entirely. Urban overcrowding to immigration. The immediate consequence of environmental degradation is internal displacement, as millions of rural citizens flood into domestic urban centers like Dakar, Casablanca, or Algiers. However, these cities are already overburdened and unable to absorb the influx of internal migrants. The resulting urban poverty, inflation, and competition for resources push individuals to make the secondary decision to cross international borders, utilizing smuggling networks to reach Spanish territory. Pull factors. The magnetic attraction of Spain. The decision to migrate requires not just a reason to leave, but a specific destination to target. Spain possesses several unique characteristics that make it an exceptionally attractive destination for Muslim migrants. Geographic proximity and unique borders. Spain's geography makes it uniquely vulnerable and accessible to the African continent. The Strait of Gibraltar separates Spain from Morocco by a mere 14 kilometers of water, making it a visible, tantalizingly close goal. Furthermore, Spain possesses a geopolitical anomaly: the autonomous cities of Ceuta and Melilla. Located on the North African coast, sharing a direct land border with Morocco,
Yeah.
these two enclaves represent the only physical land borders between the European Union and Africa. For migrants, reaching the heavily fortified fences of Ceuta or Melilla means setting foot on EU soil without ever having to cross the treacherous Mediterranean Sea. The role of the informal economy. Spain's domestic economy features a large informal sector, particularly in intensive agriculture, construction, hospitality, and domestic care. Regions like Almeria and Murcia are famous for their massive greenhouse complexes, often dubbed the Plastic Sea, which supply produce to the entirety of Europe. This sector relies heavily on cheap manual labor that native Spaniards are largely unwilling to perform. For undocumented migrants, this creates an immediate, albeit exploitative, market where they can find employment and earn income without possessing official working papers. Sociological drivers, networks, and the digital age. Migration is deeply influenced by social structures and modern communications, which lower the psychological and informational barriers to crossing borders. Established diaspora networks. Decades of migration have resulted in robust, well-established Moroccan and Algerian diaspora communities across Spain, particularly in Catalonia, Andalusia, and Madrid. When a migrant contemplates the journey, the presence of relatives or acquaintances already living in Spain provides a crucial safety net. These networks offer initial housing, financial loans, information on navigating Spanish bureaucracy, and leads on informal employment. Path is already paved, reducing the fear of the unknown. The globalization of information. The proliferation of smartphones and social media has revolutionized how migration occurs. Today, a youth in a remote village in Senegal or a suburb of Tunis can access real-time information about migration routes, the locations of border patrols, and the contact information of human smugglers via applications like WhatsApp and Facebook. Furthermore, social media platforms often project a highly romanticized, curated image of life in Europe. Images of successful migrants standing in front of European landmarks or driving cars create a powerful illusion of easily attainable wealth, fueling the phenomenon known as migration envy. The complexities of transnational smuggling networks. It is impossible to discuss the causes of border crossings without acknowledging the highly organized, lucrative industry of human smuggling. As Spain and the European Union have poured billions of euros into border securitization, installing thermal cameras, naval blockades, razor wire fences, and Eurosur surveillance systems. The independent, unassisted crossing of borders has become virtually impossible. This enforcement gap has been filled by sophisticated transnational criminal syndicates. These networks operate extensively throughout North and West Africa, offering structured packages to migrants that include transit across the Sahara, temporary housing in safe houses, and passage on rubber dinghies, zodiacs, or wooden fishing boats. The commercialization of migration means that smugglers actively market their services, sometimes convincing hesitant individuals to make the journey by offering false assurances of safety and guaranteed entry. Conclusion: the ongoing phenomenon of Muslim migration across the Spanish border is the product of a powerful convergence of global forces. It is driven by the desperate push of economic deprivation, demographic imbalances, political violence, and environmental collapse in the global South, combined with the magnetic pull of Spain's geographic proximity, labor demands, and existing diaspora networks. As long as the structural asymmetries between the European continent and its African and Middle Eastern neighbors persist, the flow of individuals seeking a better life will continue. For Spain, navigating this reality requires moving beyond short-term border enforcement toward comprehensive, long-term geopolitical strategies that address the root causes of displacement, fostering economic development, stability, and climate resilience in the countries these migrants call home. Author I Am a U.S. Soldier vlog. Thanks for watching.